Hello and welcome from sunny Mendoza, Argentina to this episode of Crossing Borders with Nathan Lustig, where I have conversations with entrepreneurs doing business across borders and the people who support them, with a focus on those with some connection to Latin America. My guest today is Carlos Jordan, a Bolivian entrepreneur who raised the biggest round of venture capital for Bolivian startup for his business UltraCasas and UltraCreditos, the Zillow of Bolivia. Carlos is the first Bolivian entrepreneur on the podcast, and I really think it's an interesting window into this beautiful country and emerging economy. Carlos grew up in Bolivia and went to the University of Texas on a scholarship, finishing the top 2% of all students before joining Bechtel and doing projects in the US and in Chile. After working on a mining project and living in Bolivia on his days off, he saw the need for a property portal and built UltraCasas. We talk about Bolivia's nascent entrepreneurial ecosystem, how Carlos is helping to build it, and how they found their inflection point with UltraCasas while talking with investors and entrepreneurs abroad, and their plans to continue to grow the company across the region. We also talk about doing business in Bolivia, some of the opportunities and challenges of doing it, and where Carlos thinks the ecosystem is moving in the future. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Carlos Jordan. Hello, Carlos. Welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being willing to do it.
Thank you for the invitation, Nathan.
Now, of course, I'm excited. You're the first entrepreneur from Bolivia to be on the podcast, and I'm excited to learn more about the ecosystem and the ups and downs of being an entrepreneur in Bolivia. So I appreciate you sharing the story. So,
Great.
what are you working on? What's your business?
So we have a company called ultragrupo.com, which right now works with two portals. One it's called ultracasas.com, which is the number one real estate marketplace in Bolivia. And the second portal is ultracreditos.com, which is a loan conversion portal, which is also number one in the country. And we started in February 2015. Right now we are hitting good statistics. Revenue, we just closed our first round and we are excited to see what happens next.
Awesome. And so for most people listening, they probably haven't either been to Bolivia or especially done business there. Can you give me a little background on what it's like working in Bolivia and starting a company there?
So, as everybody knows, and that's the reason why you just said what you said, Bolivia is a small market. That's why we don't have that much happening yet. But there's a lot of things going on as well. Bolivia has a lot of potential, has grown outstandingly in the past 10 years. It's been the best 10 years in our economy's history. That's why we've seen a lot of big companies landing in Uber, Airbnb, Pedidos Ya. Many companies from all over the world are landing in Bolivia. So we saw the opportunity. Now, on the ecosystem from the inside, we still have a lot to develop. There are not many success stories yet. We aim to be one of them. And we believe that there's a lot of talent in the country. There's a lot of software being developed in Bolivia for overseas. However, there's not much being developed for our own products or our own industry. So we think that Bolivia is an interesting market. We think that we can do a lot of testing and a lot of tech in Bolivia, own the Bolivian market, and afterwards try to go and hit the big markets with good quality tech and good quality strategy on the business side.
And what city are you in Bolivia?
I'm sorry again?
What city are you based in?
I'm in La Paz, but we have offices in La Paz, Santa Cruz, and Cochabamba.
So I've been to Bolivia, I think about 4 times now. It's one of my favorite places to go, generally because of the natural beauty. It's just a beautiful, beautiful country. Can you
Thanks.
tell people about the different regions and maybe differences between La Paz, Sucre, Santa Cruz, and what it's like, maybe problems that need to be solved in each different place?
Bolivia is an extremely mixed country. You have extremely hot, warm weather next to the Amazons, and you have cold weather in the Andes. You have a lot of mining, you have a lot of oil. So it's a huge mix of cultures and needs. Bolivia also is it's an emerging market, has been facing a lot of problems for the past 100 years. So I would say that if you come visit to Bolivia, you should certainly visit a lot of places to understand the complexity and the mix and the beauty of the country. And on the business side, again, there are a lot of opportunities, a lot of informal markets that you can target. And technology is just arriving. So many things that are, it's been quite promoted by the industry right now in every channel, finance, industry, you have insurance and so on. Many people are looking into it, but they're not looking it right. So I would say that mostly are foreign countries coming in with solutions and the Bolivian market accepting it and using it. So from a startup, Bolivian startup, we want to be the differentiator. We want to do something which is developed here in Bolivia, good quality, and we can compete not only with foreign companies coming into our country, but with our knowledge and tech, being able to also reach new countries and show what we have to offer to the world.
So one thing you mentioned was that you've had very good economic growth the last, say, 10 years. And I think the first time that I went to Bolivia would have been 2011. And you can completely tell the difference even 5 or 6 years later, of how much development has gone in, including infrastructure and things like that. But one of the biggest things I noticed, especially comparing it to a country like Chile, is how young the population is. I think there's a huge amount of people under the age of 25, which to me is very interesting for technology because it could be a country that could change very fast. Do you see that in terms of technology adoption and cell phone penetration and things like that because of it being a younger country?
Completely agree with you. I would have to say now, talking about some statistics, we're 11 million people in Bolivia. We have an internet penetration of almost 8 million now, most of them through cell phones. So you can say that Bolivia is a fully developed country. Our stats are even higher than our neighbors talking about internet penetration. Also in Bolivia, we are known to be entrepreneurs, not high quality entrepreneurs, but that can be changed. But I would say that 60% of the people are entrepreneurs. So all that force combined with good tech and knowledge can have a big impact, not only in Bolivia, but also what can we offer to the world. Technology now, it's all over the world. That's a fact. And if you combine that with good talent and entrepreneurship and young age, as you just mentioned, it's a good mix where interesting things can happen.
And let's jump into your story. Did you always know that you wanted to be an entrepreneur, or was it something that just hit you one day and you decided, you know what, I need to start a business myself?
Now, I always knew, I think most of us, most of the entrepreneurs do know that what we want to do in life. My idea at the time was that I was seeing a lot of success happening around and I wanted to at least try it. It's better to try and fail than not to try. That was what was going through my mind. I wanted to look back when I was 60 years old and see either success or failure, but see something, not just being part of the corporate world. So that was the main driver why I entered into the entrepreneur world, and I'm glad I did. And even if things were not going well, I would also be glad of doing it.
And did you start out as an entrepreneur after studying, or did you have a more corporate job for a while first?
No, no, no. My life was a little bit boring. So I was born in Bolivia. I went to high school here, then I went to school in the U.S., the University of Texas at Austin. I'm a civil engineer. I was doing well at school. I had six different scholarships, which paid for the full degree, and I was a distinguished scholar and so on. So afterwards, I applied to Stanford for a master's, where I was admitted. I ended up not going because I wasn't sure I wanted to do what the master's was about. So I ended up working for a company called Bechtel. Probably you know about it. It's the largest construction company in the US and one of the largest in the world. I started working there as a civil engineer for 8 months. Then I was sent to Chile. I was working in the mining sector in Chile for almost 8 years, where I was able to save a good amount of money. And then the last portion of my work in Chile, I was working in a mine which was close to Bolivia. So I was doing a 7 by 7 shift, which is 7 days you work, 7 days you rest. And those 7 days, I was coming back to Bolivia instead of going to Santiago, which was my place at the time. And that's when I started seeing all the needs. I Before that, I started looking into entrepreneurship, especially online. I went into a couple of startup Chile talks, and I spoke with some fellas that were doing well in the world. And the need, the how can I put it, the wish, the desire was starting to show up. So when I came to Bolivia, I wanted to rent an apartment, and I wanted the apartment to have a terrace, a balcony, and the newspaper was the only option at the time. So I remember going to almost 10 apartments, and none of them was not even close to what I wanted. So I was losing my time, and I was losing the seller's time as well. So I I had the chance to live in the US, live in Chile. Also, I spent over almost a year in Europe. So every place that I went, internet was the solution to find an apartment. So I wanted to implement the same solution in Bolivia, and that's how UltraCasas came up. We started with UltraCasas, extremely big and how can I put it? It was a basic solution at the time, but we were able, with a lot of effort, knowledge, mentoring, studying, and so on, to grow it, and now we're hitting good numbers.
And how did you decide that it was time to go out on your own?
Good, good, because um, my job was asking me to move again to now this time to the Middle East, and it was probably the breaking point, the tipping point. It was either I do it and I keep my corporate career, or I take the chance now and take the leap of faith. So I was 28 at the time. I wasn't that young anymore, and I knew that if I kept working, then family would show up and children and so on, and decisions are much harder when you have much more responsibilities. So it was now or never, and I decided it. I quit, and I started the startup.
In a lot of countries in Latin America, it's very hard for people to pull away from one of the really good corporate careers where you're making good money and go out on your own. There's a lot of pressure to stay in big business and a lot of anti-failure um, kind of pressure. What did your family and friends think when you decided to leave this great corporate career and start your own business in Bolivia?
That's a good question. As you might expect, everyone was really I don't know if impressed or sad about my decision, especially my dad. He was wondering if I was doing the right thing, and he was pushing a lot not to do it. Ultimately, the explanation was, "Hey guys, this was also to my dad. Let's give it a shot. If it doesn't work, we're going to spend maybe 2, 3 years, and then we can go back to the corporate world. Hopefully, things are going to go well." So it wasn't that much to put on risk. At least I didn't think it at the time.
And when you started the business in 2015, what was the entrepreneurial ecosystem like in La Paz? Were you able to find other tech companies, founders to talk with, or was it still pretty solitary?
To be honest, it was non-existent, and continues to be like that. It's a little bit better, but we still have a lot to work on. So that was our main problem. To begin with, I thought, and we thought we knew a lot, when in reality we didn't know anything. And the other thing is, what we didn't have many people to talk about it. So we just kept working on what we thought was good, and that made us waste a little bit more than a year. I remember when we started, the URL was different. It was called I'm sorry, jardindecasas.com, which was a really poor domain. And we were hitting 30, 50, 100 sessions a day. We were not growing further than that. We were investing money in Facebook, Google, a little bit here and there, and nothing much was happening. So after a year that we pretty much wasted, we did some technology, which was good. But again, on the other side, commercial strategy, marketing, and so on, we were not doing things well. So when we were close to closing the company, we decided to either close or start things right. So we spoke with a lot of friends. I have a lot of friends in different places because we're lived. So we started with some fellas that went to Harvard, Stanford, and a couple of guys that had successful startups in different countries in the world, and they started to giving us good quality knowledge, training, information, and that's where things started to improve. And we basically realized that talking with someone that knows about this for 20, 30 minutes was much more valuable than any master's degree or course or anything. So that's what we started to do. We started to talking to the people that knows about this business and tech business. And nowadays we have conversations and a close relation with big shots in the world. We started talking with people that own a 50 million startup on a Series A. Then we jumped to CEOs and founders of real estate marketplaces in places like France and Argentina. One of them, a good friend of us, sold it for almost 900 million euros at the time. This is in 2011. So a lot of knowledge was provided by our great friend Gils. Then we met the founder of Zona Prop, which is UltraCasas Argentina. We had a lot of talks with Mariano, and he started to helping us also quite a bit. And then through Seedstars, we started entering into competitions, and we started working on our deck. And after all these conversations, we decided that we needed some investment to be able to grow or basically just fail. So developing the deck was extremely important for us, not only to raise the money, but to really understand how the business works. So this was also pretty much the tipping point. We started working on our deck. We started understanding our business. We started talking to the right people. We went to a couple of competitions. We won Seedstars in Bolivia. We did the regional summit in Buenos Aires. And then there we met really high quality entrepreneurs raising 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, and talking to big shot investors and so on. And that's when the ecosystem started to help. Then we went to Switzerland. We competed against other 65 startups around the world. We were able to make the best 12, and out of the record, we were one of the top three. So during all this process, I'm talking August 2016, I'm sorry, August 2015, all the way to June, July 2016 is where the real knowledge was entering, and we were doing the right things. We were trained by former Google New York managers on our marketing strategy, and the ball started to roll, and that's how things actually started to grow.
And for those who don't know, what is Seedstars and what does it do?
Good. Seedstars, it's a BC, it's a fund, it's a Switzerland fund based in Switzerland. What they do is they go and scout for the best startups in the emerging markets. So they visit now over 70 or 75 emerging markets. They do a competition and they find the best startups around, pretty much looking for the next Facebook, which is happening in the emerging markets. So what's what they do is they put us in a local competition. So one wins. They look over 8,000 startups, I presume. So every winner of every country goes to Switzerland to compete. And in that visit in Switzerland for over 5 days, you meet with hundreds of entrepreneurs and you talk to all of them. You meet with investors and you understand really what's a high quality ecosystem. And then ultimately, if you win, you are guaranteed a certain investment. But if you don't, you still, if you're a promising one, you still are offered some type of investment, which was our case.
And what would you say were the top one or two things that you learned from this whole process of Seed Stars and reaching out to other CEOs and talking with the people from Google? What were the top pieces of info that really made that inflection point happen?
I would say to begin with is understanding how to really focus the business, understanding how to really search the market, what's your market size, how you're going to make money, and what you're going to do to make it. Many of startups fail. There's a statistic of like 90 to 95% of the startups fail because they focus on the product and not on the solution that they're providing. And that was our case at the beginning. We were in love with the portal, but we didn't know what the portal was actually doing for the people or how the portal was going to make money. So I would say that was the main thing to begin with. And afterwards, the second thing was once you know where you want to go, is how you're going to get there. And that's where Google and marketing comes in, digital marketing, the really high quality and proficient one. And we were able to understand how to properly measure conversions, funnel analysis, all sorts of techniques, data gathering, make sure that our portal is providing the data we need to improve, measuring everything basically. So I would say those are the two most important things. Learn where you want to go, and the second one, learn how to grow in order to make it.
And what would be if you could have, say, one or two asks for people outside of the Bolivian ecosystem that want to help make it better or support Bolivian entrepreneurs? What would you ask of either foreign investors or entrepreneurs or people who help build ecosystems?
We certainly need a good accelerator, incubator slash accelerator. We need someone with a lot of knowledge, preferably a former entrepreneur that really knows how things happen, not only on theory but on reality, helping the great talent that we have in Bolivia. We have some efforts being done, and hopefully we will see some light anytime soon. But we need a good accelerator with a lot of knowledge on hands-on techniques and strategy, and also help you on the road. Not only just provide you the information, but also help you doing it. I would say that with those things and with the talent we have in the Bolivian people, and with the strength of all the entrepreneurs that we have, certainly we can start impacting the world. So I've been talking with a lot of people about this, and good efforts are starting to happen. But this is exactly what we need: a couple of guys, a group of people that really know things, and they can teach, and they can help, and they can guide on the road strong entrepreneurs, and we will see good things happen.
So you mentioned that you were able to raise some funding for the business. Did you raise that locally from Bolivians, or did you raise it from abroad?
No, no, it was. We always talk about this, but we started trying locally, and the industry wasn't ready whatsoever. When you talk to people around here, it's starting to change, but at the time we did it, it was really hard to even explain what we're trying to do. So when we started with the deck and valuations and offerings, usually the answer was either no or, you know what, let me give you like 50K for 51% of the company kind of deal. So we had to go abroad, and that helped us a lot as well, because through this venture we met many people, and we understood many things, and we improved quite a bit. So we ended up raising almost $500,000, which is the largest round being raised in Bolivian history for a tech startup, a digital startup. We're really proud about that. And our investors are high quality investors, professional ones. One is El Comercio, which is the largest newspaper in Peru and one of the largest in the region. They themselves own up to, I think, six marketplaces in Peru. And they were amongst the few who were able to compete in the internet arena and not just fall apart. Then we have Seedstars, which again they go over 8,000 startups every year. They look closely into them, and afterwards they decide to invest in, I think, three up to five, and we were one of those three, and we're really proud about that as well. And ultimately, there's Taris in Luxembourg, which also is really focused on high growth digital startups, and they also invested in us. So that's how we were able to raise the round.
Yeah, what you're describing from local investors was exactly how it was in 2010 in Chile when I arrived with Startup Chile, and it took maybe 5 or 6 years to change. Plus, in Chile, there was a lot of government support for venture capital funds and accelerators that were offering other deals. But I think even today, a lot of family offices and wealthy people that could be angel investors still have a fairly similar idea of doing business like that. And that's true, I think, across the region. So I think it's really good that you've been able to raise some money because it's starting to show local people that, hey, this is real. And if they end up missing out on a good deal, they're going to be more likely to invest in something like you, the next Ultra Casas going forward.
Correct. It's really hard to invest on things that you don't understand, and if the ecosystem does not start to provide success stories, the privates won't look into us. So we hope again to be one of those success stories, and we are getting a lot of attention on the media, which is good. And we are seeing a lot of people looking on our site now, and they're starting to invest in new startups. And as you mentioned, this is a process, but what we are aware is that things accelerate fast now. What used to take 10 years to arrive from the US now takes 3 to 5 days. So if it took 5 years in Chile, we expect this to take 2 years in Bolivia or less than that. So we're hopeful this is going to go well.
So you mentioned earlier that in addition to the property portal, you have a site to generate mortgages. Can you talk about how you decided to launch that as well and how that got built?
Good, good. So to talk about it, let me talk a little bit about the real estate one. UltraCasas again was making 50, 100 visits a day. Now we are over 23,000 visits a day sessions. We generate over 60,000 leads a month, and we have over 25,000 listings being placed in the portal. So through UltraCasas, we had an how can I put it, an exponential growth in a year. And with that, we were able to generate thousands of mortgage leads to certain banks we were working with at the time. So we realized that we were probably the best in the country, the best lead generator in the country. So we decided not to focus only on one type of loan, which was mortgages, and not only in one bank. So we opened up ultracreditos.com, which is a loan comparison site similar to Lending Tree in the US. So now we offer five types of loans, which is mortgages, cars, consumer loans for small and medium companies, and credit cards. And we work with over 8 banks. No, with all the knowledge we gathered with UltraCasas, with UltraCreditos, in 8 months, we were able to generate almost 30,000 credit requests to the banking system, which are equivalent to over $650 million. We have a good conversion rate of a little bit more than 10 to 12%. And we realized that we are really good lead generators. We have really good SEO, SEM, Google, Facebook strategies to generate leads and place us well in the market. So what we have noticed is also that our clients are also struggling with processing the leads. We can generate the leads, but they also need help on the processing side. So we've been working for the past 5 months on processing these leads, generating technology to improve this. And we have really an interesting product that it's going to come out now in November, or yeah, let's say early November. And we expect this to be a game changer in the industry. And with the combination of UltraCasas and UltraCreditos, we think that we can generate a lot of transactions, immediate transactions, everything done digitally, only up to the last part of the funnel. And this could be a game changer. We're already talking with fellas in Chile, Mexico, Peru, and everyone's interested. So we aim by early 2019 to grow in new markets and also start with our technology being fully placed in Bolivia by November. And we should see some good things happen.
And what's the mortgage market like in Bolivia? Like, what kind of rates do people get? How long are the mortgages for? How much do they have to put down? What's kind of some average numbers?
It's extremely diverse. Good thing is that the government has placed a law that forces the banking system to give you a full loan, no no initial investment for a fixed rate for up to 30 years if your property is below a certain price. So that's been moving the market quite a bit. And we're talking about 4 to 6% rates for 30 years. Now, if you get out of that region and you go into more expensive housing, you can see rates going up to 9, 10, 12%, depending on your risk and the bank's offer. But that's pretty much the main numbers.
And I'm just curious because we had an investment in some property businesses in Chile and Colombia. So what does like an apartment that, say, a foreigner who'd come through traveling in a decent area of La Paz, what would like a two-bedroom apartment cost
I would say
to buy?
around 140,000, 150,000. It's around that range.
Interesting.
I would say from 100 up to 150.
Interesting. And how do you see the Bolivian real estate market evolving, and how has it changed over, say, the last 10 years with the current economic growth?
The construction industry has been one of the most important ones in helping the growth. So we have seen something that we've never seen before. The amount of real estate being developed in Bolivia, it's just outrageous, to the point that everyone was suspicious and concerned about it at the beginning. But certainly we had a lot of, let's say, low class in society jumping into middle class and starting being a huge market. So the growth has been quite significant. Now you see in Bolivia skyscrapers of over 40 floors, 50 floors. You see really luxury, high quality, interesting malls. A lot of things are happening. So we're really excited about that. And I think we came in at the right time because all this movement has professionalized the real estate market, and now we have really strong professional agents being part of the market, strong construction companies, and now they're using our technology, our services. So combined, we're able to further develop the real estate market in the country.
It's interesting. It's interesting. And so, what other industries have grown besides for construction and real estate over the last, say, 10 years?
Our main engine is oil and gas. Has always been, but now has been significantly the largest player in the market. Mining as well, it's a big one. Then we have Soha being a big player as well. I would say those three are the main ones. And afterwards, commerce. The regular commerce. It's a big thing in Bolivia. Everyone is it's a commerce guy. So it's a huge opportunity to get into the commerce side of the country because it's where everything happens pretty much.
And do you have any books, blogs, podcasts, documentaries that you like to recommend to people, either about startups in general or potentially about Bolivia if they want to get to know more about the country?
We basically used TechCrunch. We really like that one a lot. We used Wall Street Journal. We usually go overseas. There's not much happening down here. Honestly, we have a nice blog, so we recommend that one as well. But We like to see what's happening around the world. We also see what's happening a lot of in Mexico and Argentina. We think when Brazil, those three countries are leading in innovation and technology. So I would say around those three or four places is where we get most of our information.
And what about if someone wants to learn more just about what's going on in Bolivia, not necessarily in tech? Where should someone take a look, or any books or documentaries that you can recommend?
You need to do a lot of research. There's not a single place where you can find a lot. There are a few magazines. Emprendedores Bolivia, it's one, but I would recommend to do a lot of research first because you won't be able to find one place where it's going to give you all the information you need.
And if you could go back to when you started the business, knowing what you know today, what advice would you give yourself?
I would have probably gone into a more transactional uh, business, not so much on the lead generation one. So I would probably have started with UltraCreditos instead of UltraCasas. I would accelerated the growth significantly. I would have done much more research than the one I did at the time. So I would say those things: get more into a transactional business and do much more research, understand the markets much better, and based on that, define the opportunities. Not so much on your daily needs. That probably works much better on bigger markets, but on small markets, you have to drive yourself more on what the market is asking than what's your daily needs and how can you solve them.
And so, what's next for you and UltraCasas and UltraCreditos?
So UltraCasas is growing well. We have been hitting 10% monthly growth in revenue for the past almost 7 months. So we are excited about it and we want to continue to grow. We see that our technology in UltraCasas is top class and competitive in any market. We have spoken with big guys as mentioned, and these guys are I'm talking eBay, OLX, I'm talking Seloge, I'm talking Sonaprob, big tech companies that have acknowledged our technology. We even started some innovation on our sites. For instance, we were the first that we knew. I cannot say that we were the first all over, but at least from the ones we do a lot of research on, which are over 20 portals, we were the first to provide WhatsApp connection, WhatsApp contacting through Ultracasas. And this has been huge. And now we know that over 10 portals in our region are using it. So we are happy to know that we are doing some innovation, not only for Bolivia, but also for the region now. We also have developed some strong evaluation for projects technology. We have a lot of data and we're now using it. And this has raised a lot of attention from many people locally, but also people on the others on other countries around the region. And finally, if you look into our design UX UI, you will notice that what we have compared to many other portals in the region and in the world is quite attractive and simple to use and very appealing for the user. So we see UltraCasas growing in the Bolivian market for another 2 3 years and reaching our hotspot. We should reach break even early 2019 on the UltraCasas side. Now on UltraCreditos, we are focusing most of our innovation there. We think that there's a huge opportunity in the processing of the loans, and we are again launching our technology in November, and this should be a game changer at least at the beginning. And with that, we know we're going to have our learning curve, which should be much faster than our previous learning curves. And with this innovation, we should have the capacity to get into big markets and play with the big guys.
Well, I hope to see you guys continue to have success in Bolivia and are able to expand outside. I think it's a really cool story, and thanks for sharing it and sharing more information about what's going on in Bolivia. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Nathan. It's always a pleasure to talk about these things. It's always exciting, and I think we have a responsibility to further inspire people that are around to want to do things like us. Maybe it's good to mention also that it's not easy, that a lot of research has to be done, and it's not for everyone, but for the ones who are looking into it, it's a great, exciting world, and it's where huge things can happen and also huge failures. So be prepared for both.
No, I think that's good advice. Well, thanks again for doing it. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Nathan. Good talking to you, mate.
Thanks again for listening to this episode of Crossing Borders with my guest, Carlos Jordan. You can find past episodes on real estate portals in other regions, like my conversation with Adrian Fisher of Propiedad Fácil and Property Simple, and my conversation with Brian Reckworth, founder of Viva Real, the Zillow of Brazil, on my blog, nathanlustig.com, or on iTunes and Stitcher. Thanks to Julianne from Seedstars for setting up this conversation, and to Angel and Sofia for doing the production and edits. If you enjoyed the podcast, please share with a friend or write a review on iTunes and Stitcher. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks again, and have a great rest of your day.